You know, there's a specific kind of silence that hits right after a car crash. Before the sirens start wailing, and the world wakes up to the tragedy, it's just the sound of steam hissing off a hot engine block, and the rhythmic, uncaring tap of rain against metal. And that was the sound filling my ears at 11:40 p.m. on a desolate stretch of old Highway 101, just outside of Forks, Washington. I'm Caleb, by the way, Caleb Reed, and for the last 6 years, I've been trying very hard to be nobody. Just a guy who clocks into the night shift at the lumber yard, keeps his head down, and raises his 9-year-old daughter, Sophie, without letting the ghosts of my past as a Marine Raider tear our little life apart. But the thing about instincts, the kind they burn into your nervous system, with 8 years of combat drills and field medicine, is that you can't turn them off, just because you traded a rifle for a flashlight. So when I saw those headlights cut crookedly through the timber line, and heard the sickening crunch of steel meeting an old oak tree, my foot hit the brake before my brain even registered what was happening. Most people, sensible people, they slow down, they call 911. Maybe they wait in their car with the hazards on, because it's pouring rain, and it's dangerous out there. But I don't work that way, never have, which is probably why my knuckles were white on the steering wheel as I pulled over, grabbed the med kit I still keep under the seat. Old habits die hard, and sprinted into the downpour. The car was a mess, a silver sedan crumpled like a soda can, smoke curling up into the rain, and inside, slumped over the center console, was a woman wearing a janitor's gray jumpsuit, blood dark and glossy against the cheap fabric, looking for all the world like she was gone. Just another tragic statistic on a dangerous road. I wrenched the door open, the metal groaning in protest, and put 2 fingers to her neck, expecting nothing but getting a thready, frantic flutter of a pulse that told me she was fighting, really fighting, to stay on this side of the curtain. "Hey, stay with me," I said, my voice dropping into that calm command tone I used to use when the world was exploding around us in Helmand. "I'm getting you out, don't try to move." But her eyes snapped open, and they weren't glassy or vacant. They were terrified, sharp, and entirely too intelligent for someone half dead in a ditch. She grabbed my wrist, her grip surprisingly strong, digging her nails into my jacket like she was trying to anchor herself to the earth. And she hissed, "No cops, no hospitals, promise me." And normally, I'd brush that off as shock, as the adrenaline talking. But there was a clarity in her gaze that froze me. "He owns them," she wheezed, blood bubbling at the corner of her lips. "Julian. He'll finish it, promise me. Protect Mia." I didn't know who Julian was. Didn't know a Mia, but I knew terror when I saw it. And I knew the look of someone who was running from something worse than death. So I nodded, just once, a silent pact made in the rain. And I pulled her out of the wreckage as gently as I could, laying her on the wet asphalt to assess the damage. That's when the pieces started to feel wrong. Like a puzzle jammed together by a toddler, I ripped open the Velcro of her jumpsuit to check for chest trauma and saw the clothes underneath. Silk, high-end, tailored, worth more than my truck. And her hands. They were manicured, soft, not the hands of a janitor who scrubs floors for a living. And the crash itself, I looked at the car, really looked at it, and saw the airbag hadn't deployed. The wire clearly cut, and the impact point on the tree didn't match the skid marks. Like she hadn't lost control, but had been pushed, or the car had been rigged to fail. Then the sirens started, wailing in the distance, getting louder fast, because we were 20 miles from the nearest station, and it had been maybe for minutes since the crash. And when the ambulance tore around the bend, lights flashing, I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It was a private rig, unmarked except for a generic medical cross. And the 2 guys who jumped out didn't move like paramedics. They moved like operators, like soldiers clearing a room, efficient, scanning the perimeter, hands hovering near their waists, eyes dead and focused. "Step away from the victim," the lead guy barked, not looking at me but staring at the woman like she was a package that had fallen off a truck. And my gut screamed threat so loud it drowned out the rain. I stepped back, hands raised in a non-threatening gesture, playing the part of the shaken civilian, watching as they knelt beside her. And that's when I saw it. The guy wasn't checking her airway, wasn't stabilizing her spine. He was pulling a syringe from his pocket, preloaded, uncapped, and he was aiming for the IV port he'd just slapped onto her arm without even cleaning the site. Potassium chloride, maybe, or air, something to stop a heart that was already weak. And I realized with a sick jolt that they weren't here to save her. They were the cleanup crew. I didn't think. I just moved. I took 2 steps, pivoted, and drove my boot into the kneeling man's ribs, feeling the crack of bone. And before his partner could draw the weapon I knew was tucked under his empty jacket, I was on him, using the momentum to slam his head into the side of the ambulance. Lights out, instant unconsciousness. The first guy was gasping, reaching for his belt. But I kicked the syringe away and put him down with a chokehold that I hadn't used in 6 years. Watching his eyes roll back, leaving me standing there in the rain with 2 unconscious hitmen and a dying woman, who was now my sole responsibility. "You picked the wrong night to drive down my road," I muttered, hauling the woman whose name tag said Betty, but whose clothes screamed CEO, into the passenger seat of my truck, leaving the fake medics zip-tied to their own stretcher with their own supplies. And I peeled out, heading not for a hospital, but for the only place I could control, my cabin deep in the woods where Sophie was sleeping over at my sister's place in town. Thank God, the drive was a blur of checking her pulse and watching the rearview mirror, paranoia itching under my skin, because if they could send a cleanup crew that fast, they had resources, they had eyes everywhere. And I was burning my peaceful life to the ground with every mile I drove. I got her onto my kitchen table, sweeping aside Sophie's homework and the fruit bowl, turning my dining room into a triage center, grabbing the dusty black tough box from the top of my closet, the one labeled "Do Not Touch," and cracking it open to reveal the field surgical kit I'd liberated from the cores. She was fading, gray-faced and shivering, her breath rattling in her chest like loose gravel. And I had to work fast, cutting away the silk shirt to reveal a jagged laceration just below her ribs, and a belly that was bruising purple internal bleeding, likely a nicked spleen or liver. I didn't have anesthesia, didn't have a sterile OR. It took 2 hours, 2 hours of blood and terror, and me talking to her unconscious form just to keep myself grounded. But finally, her breathing leveled out, the bleeding stopped, and I collapsed into a chair, shaking from the adrenaline dump, staring at my bloody hands and wondering how I was going to explain this to, well, anyone. My phone buzzed on the counter, a blocked number, and I stared at it, the screen lighting up the dark room, and I just knew, that answering it was the point of no return. "Mr. Reed," a voice said when I picked up, smooth like polished glass and twice as cold. "I believe you have something that belongs to the shareholders, and since we know exactly where your daughter, Sophie, attends 3rd grade, I suggest we skip the part where you pretend to be a hero." My blood turned to ice, the kind of cold that starts in your marrow, because they knew Sophie's name, they knew her school, which meant they had been watching, tracking, waiting, and suddenly this wasn't about saving a stranger anymore. It was about a war arriving at my doorstep. "If you go near my daughter," I said, my voice barely a whisper but heavy with every violent thing I'd ever learned, "I will burn your entire world down, starting with you." Brave words, the voice chuckled. "But Ellen Vance is legally dead as of 3 hours ago. Tragic accident. Closed casket. Which means you're harboring a corpse, Caleb. And corpses don't have rights. You have until dawn to bring her to the old shipyard, or Sophie becomes an orphan." The line went dead, and I looked at the woman Ellen Vance, apparently, who was stirring on the table, eyes fluttering open, filled with pain but lucid. "He knows," she rasped, trying to sit up and failing. "Julian, my brother. He's selling the drone tech, Caleb, the autonomous swarms, selling them to insurgents, to cartels. I found the ledger. I was going to the FBI. He threatened my kid. I cut her off, not caring about drones or ledgers, only caring about the little girl with pigtails who was my entire universe. He knows about Sophie." Elena grabbed my hand again, her eyes pleading. "He can't access the files without the biometrics. My thumbprint and Mia's. My daughter. She's at the conservatory in Seattle. He'll kill me, but he needs her alive to unlock the drive. If he gets to her first, he wins, and he'll wipe us all out." "Seattle is 3 hours away," I said, checking my watch, calculating routes, fuel, threats. "And I'm a wanted man. He thinks I'm helpless, Elena whispered, reaching into her bra and pulling out a slim, blood-smeared flash drive. He thinks he's won. Get Mia. Bring her here. We unlock this, we upload it to the cloud, and Julian goes to prison for treason. It's the only way to save Sophie. The only way to stop him. I looked at the drive, looked at her desperate face, and then I grabbed my keys, my sidearm, and the photo of Sophie I kept in my wallet. I wasn't a soldier anymore. I wasn't a medic. I was a father with a gun and a promise to keep. And God help anyone who stood between me and Seattle. I hit the interstate doing 90, the rain smashing against the windshield like it was trying to hold me back, my truck's engine roaring a protest that matched the chaos in my head. Seattle was a straight shot north, but nothing is ever straight when you're running from a billionaire with a private army. So I stuck to the backroads, the logging trails I knew from my youth, cutting through the darkness with only my running lights on. Elena was barely conscious in the passenger seat, strapped in with duct tape over the seatbelt to keep her upright, clutching a pillow to her stitched-up abdomen, murmuring instructions about the Conservatory of Arts where her daughter, Mia, was studying violin, completely unaware that her uncle had just murdered her mother or tried to, and was coming to collect her like a piece of livestock. She's 15, Elena whispered, pain lacing every word. She thinks I'm on a business trip in Tokyo. Julian will send an extraction team, posing as family security. You have to get to her before they do. Caleb, I'll get her, I said, my eyes scanning the tree line for ambush points. But you need to stay alive, you hear me? If you die, I'm just a guy with a kidnapped teenager and a dead CEO in his truck. I ditched the truck 10 miles outside the city, buried it deep in a ravine under a pile of brush, and hot-wired an old sedan parked behind a derelict gas station. An awful thing to do, stealing from a stranger. But I left a stack of cash on the dashboard and prayed for forgiveness later. We rolled into Seattle just as the sun was trying to bleed through the gray cloud cover. The city waking up, commuters sipping coffee, totally oblivious to the invisible war happening in their streets. The conservatory was a fortress of glass and steel, screaming money and pretension. I parked a block away, pulled my hood up, and told Elena to keep her head down. Give me 10 minutes, I said. If I'm not back in 15, call the police and take your chances. I walked past the security desk with the confidence of a man who belongs anywhere. He chooses to step, flashing a fake badge I'd kept from my contracting days, muttering about a gas leak inspection. I found the rehearsal hall on the 3rd floor. The sound of a lone violin drifting into the hallway, haunting, melancholic, beautiful. I pushed the door open and saw her, Mia, a carbon copy of her mother but with innocence still intact, standing center stage, eyes closed, lost in the music. Mia, I said softly, stepping out of the shadows. She jumped, nearly dropping the bow, her eyes snapping to me with fear. Who are you? Security isn't allowed in here. I'm not security, I said, showing her the phone I'd taken from Elena, the screen displaying a photo of the two of them that only her mom would have. Your mom sent me. She's hurt. We need to go. My mom is in Japan, she said, backing away, reaching for her phone. I'm calling Uncle Julian. Julian is the one who hurt her, I said, stepping closer, keeping my hands open, pleading with her to trust me. He tried to kill her last night. He wants the drive, Mia. He needs your fingerprint. Look at me. Do I look like a kidnapper, or do I look like the only guy terrified enough to be telling the truth? She hesitated, looking at my mud-stained boots, the desperation in my eyes, and then her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. It's Julian's head of security. He says they're downstairs to pick me up. They're not here to pick you up, I said, hearing the elevator ding down the hall. They're here to erase you. We have to move now. We ran. We didn't take the elevator. We took the fire stairs, taking them 3 at a time, bursting out into the alleyway just as black SUV screeched to a halt at the front entrance. I shoved Mia into the back seat of the stolen sedan next to her mother, and the scream she let out when she saw Elena bloodied, pale, barely breathing was a sound I'll never forget. Mom, oh God, Mom. Drive, Elena wheezed, reaching back to squeeze her daughter's hand. Just drive. The trip back was a nightmare. Julian's men were tracking us. I could feel it. Could see the drones buzzing high above the highway. Watching. I knew we couldn't go back to my cabin. They'd be waiting. We needed a stronghold. I called the only person I trusted, Mara, an old combat vet who ran a remote animal sanctuary up in the Cascades. I'm bringing heat, Mara, I told her. A lot of it. Bring it on, she said. Hanging up, we roared up the mountain road, thus kicking up behind us. But as we reached the sanctuary gates, I saw them 3 armored vehicles blocking the path, men in tactical gear deploying. Julian standing in the center of them wearing a cashmere coat, like he was attending a gallery opening. He had Sophie. My heart stopped. My little girl, holding her teddy bear, looking small and terrified next to this monster. End of the line, Caleb. Julian shouted, his voice echoing off the canyon walls. Trade, the drive and the girl for your daughter. Simple economics. I stopped the car. I looked at Elena. She was fading fast, the adrenaline wearing off, death creeping in. He won't let Sophie go, she whispered. He can't leave witnesses. I know, I said, checking the magazine in my pistol. 7 rounds. Not enough. The drive, Elena rasped, handing it to me. It has a failsafe. If you enter the wrong biometric code 3 times, it doesn't just lock. It broadcasts the GPS coordinates to the NSA as a distress beacon. It's a dead man's switch. I looked at Mia. She was terrified, crying silently. You trust me? I asked her. She nodded. I stepped out of the car, hands up, holding the drive. Let Sophie walk to me, I yelled. Then you get the drive and the girl. Julian smiled, that shark smile. Send the girl over. He signaled to his men. They pushed Sophie forward. She ran to me, burying her face in my legs. Daddy, I was so scared. Go to the car, baby, I whispered. Get in the back with the nice lady and cover your ears. As soon as Sophie was in the car, Julian's men raised their rifles. The drive, Caleb, and Mia, come and get it, I said. And I tossed the drive onto the gravel between us. Julian gestured to one of his goons, who ran forward, grabbed the drive, and plugged it into a ruggedized tablet. Scan it, Julian ordered. He looked at Mia, who had stepped out of the car, trembling. Come here, sweetheart. Uncle Julian just wants to secure your inheritance. Mia walked forward, tears streaming down her face, and placed her thumb on the scanner. Beep. Access denied. Try it again. Julian snapped. Beep. Access denied. One more time, Julian growled, pulling a gun from his coat. Don't play games with me. Mia looked at me, and I nodded. She pressed her thumb down. Beep. Access denied. Protocol Omega initiated. A piercing siren erupted from the tablet, so loud everyone flinched. What did you do? Julian screamed, aiming his gun at Mia. I didn't do anything, I said, raising my own weapon. We just called the cavalry. Suddenly, the sky roared. Not thunder, helicopters, Black Hawks screaming over the ridge line. Unmarked but distinctly federal. Homeland Security. The distress beacon was flagged as a Tier 1 treason alert. Drop your weapons. Amplified voices boomed from the sky. Red laser dots danced across Julian's chest. It was chaos. Julian's men hesitated. They were mercenaries, not martyrs, and started dropping their guns. Julian looked at the sky, looked at me, and realized his money couldn't buy his way out of a federal raid. He dropped to his knees, defeated. I ran to the car. Elena had passed out, but she was smiling. 6 months later, I'm sitting on my porch, watching Sophie and Mia chasing Mara's dogs around the yard. Elena is in a wheelchair on the deck, still recovering from the surgeries, but looking like the CEO she is. The company, Vance Dynamics, is under federal oversight, but Elena is cleaning house, firing the corrupt board members, rebuilding it into something decent. You know.